I recently did an episode where I interviewed a great colleague and a great friend of mine, Dr. Andrew Thaler. And at the end of the interview, I asked him what he was up to these days because, to be honest, you just never know what Andrew Thaler is up to at any point in time. Always up to something interesting. Just to give you a bit of a background on him, Andrew is a guy who is always at the intersect of technology and ocean conservation. So you just never know what he's up to. He's had some pretty interesting projects in the past. But he let me know that he was spending some time on a climate change committee in his county. And I was so proud of him because we had a similar discussion about 5 years ago where he mentioned that he wanted to do something just like this. And then he said something that really hit me. He said that local government and government committees is where specialists and experts can really make a difference. So we're going to talk about that on today's episode of the How to Protect the Ocean podcast. Let's start the show. Hey everybody, welcome back to another exciting episode of the How to Protect the Ocean podcast. I am your host, Andrew Lewin, and this is a podcast where you find out what's happening in the ocean, how you can speak up for the ocean, and what you can do to live for a better ocean. And today we're going to be talking about what you can do locally that will help you globally. We've heard that statement before, right? Especially when I was like a young man, not a young man anymore. I'm more of a middle-aged man. I was a young man and everybody was talking about, think globally, act locally. That was the big thing to try and combat climate change, is do local things. Because if more people did local things, then globally we would do better because everybody in their own community would be helping out locally. Now, of course, that didn't happen as much as we were hoping, but it still happened. And that's something that, in certain places is a good thing. And when I was talking to Andrew the other day to do the podcast, we talked about a lot of stuff. Deep sea mining, which was great. If you haven't checked it out, check out episode 1420, so 1420. It's on Monday. It was 2 episodes ago. And we talked a lot about deep sea mining. We talked a lot about his PhD. We talked a lot about his history in deep sea mining. Talked about what it looks like for ocean conservation, what it looks like for global conservation and climate change, using electric vehicles and all that kind of stuff. And at the end of that episode, I asked him, what are you doing? What are you up to these days? And he talked a lot of things. He talked about how he's working with a colleague and a friend of his to create a rum distillery, or help create a rum distillery in Dominica. And he was talking about how he wanted to do more of the open CTD, which is a fantastic project. And then he talked about what he's been kind of doing, a big announcement. It was a big announcement for me because he talked about how he was acting more locally and doing stuff locally. And when he said that statement where he said, local government committees is where specialists and experts can really make a difference, that was so profound. That was so profound because I think a lot of times when we talk about climate change, we talk about plastic pollution, we talk about a lot of the overfishing, a lot of the major things that are impacting our oceans globally. We feel like we can't do anything. We feel like it is a big problem that we can't help, that the difference that we make isn't going to make a big difference. We're one person on a planet, with almost 8 to 9 billion people. And so if we do something locally, what's that going to do? But if you have an expertise in something, whether it be business, whether it be engineering, whether it be marine science, whether it be climate change, or you even have not necessarily an expertise, but a lot of knowledge in something and you're interested in something, then you can join or create committees locally that will help your either town, city, or village. I'm not saying this is going to happen everywhere you go. Now, Andrew is a special type of person. He's very motivated. He's very active within the community. And so, it wasn't surprising when I saw him do this or when I heard of him doing this. But I do strongly believe that anybody could be a part of this. This is something that we can all do. Maybe not a climate change committee, but it could be an environmental committee. Whether it be a committee on, for your local city or town or county, maybe it could be on the environmental committee of a business, of the place you work, right? Being able to sit on a committee and help enact decisions to make your business or the place you work more sustainable, more eco-friendly, that can go a long way, because now you're impacting other people, right? You're showing that your place of work is a leader within the community for environmental protection, right? Or environmental sustainability. Or in your local city, county, you're involved and you're talking to people and you're trying to put things forward and you're trying to help wherever you can, right? This is where we can make the best difference. And I completely agree with Andrew in saying, if you have some sort of expertise or you have some sort of great knowledge, you can help build your community. You can help your community out. He talked about one example, and he kind of joked about it. He says you would be surprised at how difficult it is to raise 4 foot of road in his county. He goes, it was immensely difficult. And I can kind of get it, because I've worked with government, I've worked in the environmental consulting field before, and you're talking about raising 4 feet of road that's not going to make a big impact on the actual road, but it's going to require a lot of soil. It's probably super, super expensive, and you're going to have to raise it. You're going to have to do all the construction around it, get the permits and all this kind of stuff. It can be quite complicated, and I do believe him. But, he's helping his county with the rest of the committee members to be able to, do something about climate change locally. So that if there is a storm surge, or if there is, God forbid, a natural disaster of some sort, that community will have been proactive and hopefully done some major changes, or even some slight changes that could have some major benefits instead of some major losses, right? And major challenges ahead of time. If you're proactive and you put the money in place and you put the work in place before something bad happens, it'll probably cost less. It costs a lot less to conserve and protect than to restore. You'd be surprised at how much it costs to restore. 10 to 100 times the amount. It's ridiculous. As someone who's recreated fish habitat or been a part of projects that recreated fish habitat in the Great Lakes, man, you'd be surprised how much it costs to put rocks down, right? Just rocks that are locally found and added to part of the Great Lakes to create a fish habitat. You'd be surprised. You're looking at almost $1 million just to put rocks down. So it can be very difficult. But without the people who are speaking on behalf of the city, town, or county, or wherever you live, and without that committee to sort of look over projects or be able to insert itself into processes that make sense, the community can be very vulnerable, or can get even more vulnerable. Especially those of you who live along coastlines or along, rivers that could cause damage, right? If they're not taken care of. And I think that's adamant. Locally here in my province, we have certain zones, just like any other province or state, where things are protected. So what we had, or kind of had, is a green belt. And it's north of Toronto, and it runs along, parallel to the city. And it's this belt that was going to be set aside, protected, to remain green, because the whole point of the green belt was to conserve natural lands so that we didn't mess up the system too much. And lo and behold, a government comes through and says, hey, we need housing. And there's a lot of shady stuff that went behind that, because he had a lot of developer friends. We need housing, so we're going to take a piece of the green belt and we're going to allow, it to be bought and owned and sold so that we can put more houses in place. It had to be there, because we're putting a highway through that one section. And it just so happens that some of my best friends who have donated to my daughter's wedding and campaign and all this kind of stuff are going to buy it. And they're going to make a ton of money off of it. And there are a lot of people that are on, that work full-time on NGOs and nonprofit organizations and advocacy groups and so forth, who are not happy and are trying to expose the corruption, or so-called alleged corruption, that is going on here, or potentially going on. And there are people who are on committees who are also advocating for the help of the Greenbelt. We can't do anything without those people in those committees. We, without people to look out for these types of things, these types of events that occur that could be very significant to us, in the future, because yes, this is a small piece of the Greenbelt, but what is that going to do later on? Is that going to open up other pieces, right? Because this is just land, essentially, natural land that hasn't been converted into housing, but obviously can be with this right government and the right motivation, i.e. money. The other thing, another example, personally to me, and I regret that I wasn't able to do more in this, was after, when I was working for the federal government, I really got to see what that government, the conservative government at the time, led by Prime Minister Harper, what they did to our environment, or what they didn't do. They took away a lot of regulations. They changed laws and so forth. And I didn't want to be part of that anymore. I wanted to make sure that people locally in the city that I live, Burlington, knew about what was going on and knew why that was so wrong. Not to say it in their face and yell at them. It was more of just being a resource. So when the new government got in, I felt that it was a time to make a difference. And so I made an appointment with our local MP, who was a first-time MP at the time. And I made an appointment with her, and I talked to her, and I said, look, this government did this last time. And we all knew what they did. And I didn't like it. I felt helpless. I felt scared. I felt angry. And I don't want to feel that way again because of my lack of action. And so I would like to offer my services, my volunteering, as ways, in part, if you need questions or answering or need support in any kind of way, of a volunteer point of view, at meetings or anything like that. And the MP took it to heart, which was really nice of her, and invited me to a number of meetings to offer sort of a hand in climate change and local climate change and, environmental sort of policies and environmental knowledge meetings that they had with the public. Unfortunately, I never really got to go. I got way too busy, and I, working for the federal government, I had a lot of conflict of interest, things to worry about, and so I just never did it. However, I do want to do that again someday. I think that's something that being able to participate locally is really important, not only for my own sake, for my family's sake and for my city's sake, but also for our future's sake. Taking away a piece of the Greenbelt, which has nothing to do with my city, but it has to do with my province, is going to have ramifications for years to come. That land will never get back. There are going to be houses that are going to be built on it, apartments that are going to be built on it, condos are going to be built on it. People are going to make a lot of money, but they're not going to care about the green space. They're not going to care about how we're messing up our natural air, our natural areas, just for a profit, just for greed. And that bothers me. And so at the beginning of the year, I said I wanted to do pieces on local activities and to show what can be done, but also other activities for the ocean and more, longer form pieces where I do multiple interviews to give you and give people a resource of where they can do, what actions they can take. And so that's where, working locally can really help. If you have an expertise and you can provide a resource, then be a resource. Be a resource locally. Get involved in your local community. Get involved on committees. If there's no committee, find out how to start one. These are all things that can help. Not from be a pain in the butt to the government type of deal. The idea is do it for you and do it for the people in your community. That should be your goal. If that's your goal, then I think it'll work out really, really well. And I think it'll be really important to do that. So that's the episode. It's not a very long episode. I just wanted to share that with you and dive a little deeper into it, because when Andrew mentioned that statement to me and what he was doing, something resonated with me that I wanted to share with you. And because, every Friday we talk about how you can live for a better ocean by taking action. These are the types of actions you can take that'll make you, that'll get you more empowered, make you feel more empowered and feel that you're making a difference, even if it is locally, even if it is for just a few people, even if it is just for your community, however, big or small it might be. This is something that I think everybody should be involved with. You should be involved with your community, you should be taking care of your community, and look at it as an overall impact on the world, on the planet, and whatever it's going through, right? So that's my thoughts on that. I would love to hear your thoughts. Please feel free to DM me at How to Protect the Ocean, at How to Protect the Ocean on Instagram. You can also get a hold of me through our website, speakupforblue.com. / I think it's contact us, but just hit on the contact us. It's a form that goes right to my email, and I'd be happy to get back to you. But other than that, I want to thank you so much for listening to this episode of How to Protect the Ocean podcast. I am your host, Andrew Lewin. Have a great day. We'll talk to you next time, and happy conservation.